The execution of Carey Dean Moore, scheduled for 10 a.m. today, was carried out pursuant to the order issued by the Nebraska Supreme Court on July 5, 2018. The first of four substances were administered at 10:24 a.m. The Lancaster County coroner produced Moore's time of death at 10:47 a.m. As the director of the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services, I am required to carry out the order of the court. This agency has done so with professionalism, respect for the process, and dignity for all involved. I recognize that today's execution impacts many people on many levels, most certainly the families of Mr. Van Ness and Mr. Helgeland. In accordance with Nebraska Revised Statute 83-970, Moore designated 3 people and 1 member of the clergy as witnesses to the execution. The 6 witness slots designated by the director were filled by 4 members of the Nebraska news media and 2 NDCS staff. Moore's body will be remanded to the custody of the Nebraska State Patrol. An autopsy will be conducted.
My name is Brent. I'm a reporter with the Associated Press. I'm going to give you, as best I can, a chronological timeline of everything that happened, and we're going to start with with Mr. Moore, his statement and the execution warrant being read. At 9:03 a.m., Mr. Moore was brought into the admissions area of the prison. Present in the room were Acting Deputy Warden Michelle Capps, who read the execution warrant to Mr. Moore. Also attending were Robert Madsen, the acting warden of the penitentiary, and Scott Frakes, the Corrections Department director, and Kim McGill, the acting public information officer of the penitentiary, and Jason Hurt, the associate warden. Mr. Moore made a statement while standing. He was shackled at the waist and wrists, ankles, and held, surrounded by 4 corrections officers and one person who was standing behind him. His statement in full was, and this is quoting directly, just the statement. He was asked if he had a final statement, and he said, "Just the statement that I hand-delivered to you already about my brother Donnie and the innocent men on Nebraska's death row. That's all that I have to say." She then said, "Thank you, sir," and he said, "You're welcome." He was then led out of the admissions area. After that, there was a period of lapse of a little more than an hour. At 10:17 a.m., we were summoned to the execution chamber witness area. At 10:19 a.m., we arrived. There was a green curtain that was down. At 10:24 a.m., the curtain lifted. Mr. Moore was covered in a white sheet with his left arm extended out and connected to the IV. He turned his head left and mouthed several words to appears a number of witnesses, including the words "I love you." He said that at 10:25 a.m., 10:25 and 27 seconds, he repeated that several times. At one point he turned his head to say that. At 10:26 a.m., he closed his eyes. He turned his head so that it was straight on the pillow, so that he would have been staring straight at the ceiling if his eyes were open. He looked, and then another point, he briefly looked back over at his family and closed his eyes. He closed his eyes at 10:26 minutes and 28 seconds. At 10:27 a.m., he started breathing heavily. At 10:29 a.m., the acting warden walked over to it would have been his left side where he was lying down, and did an eyelid check. They lifted up his eyelid. He flashed a pen light in his eyes presumably to check his consciousness. And then he stepped back. Also present in the execution room were the acting warden and Director Frakes with Mr. Moore. At 10:30 and 46 seconds, Mr. Moore appeared to cough, and his diaphragm moved up and down rapidly. At 10:31 and 14 seconds, his chest stopped and he went still. His face very gradually initially turned slightly red and then turned purple. At a few times, we weren't able to get the exact times, but the IV line appeared to move a few times after that happened. At 10:38 and about 24 seconds, his eyelids cracked open very slightly. At 10:39 and 3 seconds, Director Frakes said something into his radio, and then at 10:39 and 12 seconds, the curtain went down. So the process took about 15 minutes total. At 10:53 and 20 seconds, the curtain went up again. At that point, Mr. Moore's whole body was covered except for his face. His head was tilted slightly to the left, and then the curtain was up for about 40 seconds to allow us to observe Mr. Moore's body, and then at 10:54 a.m., the curtain went down again. And as Director Frakes mentioned, the time of death was proclaimed at 10:47 a.m. So that's all that I have.
Questions? You guys want to ask some questions? I'm Joe Dugan with the Omaha World Herald.
Can you describe to us the reaction of the other non-media witnesses?
There were no other non-media, well, excuse me, there was the associate warden was in the room with us, but there were no other witnesses that we could see. There was a partition that separated us from Mr. Moore's witnesses, so we couldn't see any.
When you say that, when Brent says that his face turned red and then purple, is there any grimacing or anything like that on his face?
I did not personally
I didn't see
notice any real change in his facial expression at any point. There was no saliva or anything that I could notice on his face.
Clarify, that was at 10:34?
Give me a sec. 10:34, when his face turned purple, or what were you?
Correct, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it would have been around that. At 10:31, at 10:31 his chest stopped. 10:31 and 14 seconds his chest stopped, and he went still. And his face, it was just a very gradual process. His face turned slightly red and then purple. And to your question, he didn't, other than the brief, sharp expansion and contraction of his diaphragm, he didn't appear to move that much.
Was that after all the drugs were given?
It was not possible for us to know exactly when each drug was administered. We could see the IV line went from another room, an attached room, to the execution chamber itself. That would have been positioned sort of where Mr. Moore's head was, and that line came in and went to his arm. You could see that line move at times, but there was no announcement or there was no color in the line. It wasn't easy to tell when actually they changed drugs.
Joe, could you give us your characterization of Mr. Moore's demeanor while the warrant was being read and also during his statement?
I would say that he was composed. He certainly looked maybe slightly shaken. The gravity of what was happening to him was clear on his face and his expression, I would say. But he was composed. His voice was clear when he spoke. He clearly looked around the room to see who all was there. Otherwise, kind of kept his gaze toward the floor, and I'll let other people.
Yeah, I would echo that. I have down in my notes that he alternated between lowering his head slightly and looking up at the deputy warden. He looked around. There was no real dramatic movements though on his part, and he was, as I said before, he was surrounded on 4 sides by correction staff, so he wasn't able to move dramatically or anything.
Who was he addressing when he said, there's a mention the letter he gave someone, and just to be clear, he did not physically hand the letter in that room, correct?
We have not yet gotten a copy of the letter, so we don't know what exactly that says. This person he was addressing was Michelle Capps, C-A-P-P-S, one L on Michelle. She was the one who read the execution warrant to Mr. Moore.
As far as you can tell, did this work the way it was intended to?
Chip Matthews, News Channel Nebraska. From what I saw, being my first execution, it looked like it did. There didn't appear to be any complications. The curtain was down for a period of time, so we can't say what happened behind the curtain, but from what we saw, it appeared to go as planned.
What were the emotions in the execution witness room? Were people crying or saying anything during this?
Again, for us, it was us, the media, members of the media in our room, a rather small room, couldn't have been more than like 4 by 7, something like that, a rather small room, 5 chairs total, and also Jason Hurt, the associate deputy warden. That's all that was in that room. So for us, it was a matter of fact.
You couldn't see the family members?
Not at all. Not at all.
And you couldn't hear anything on the other side of that partition?
Other than the cough.
We could hear coughing, and there was a brief coughing, and that was really about it.
But just to be clear, we could not hear inside the execution chamber itself.
Right.
We were told that was a soundproof room. So the noises, whatever noises we heard, were from the other witness side.
Were you given any indication of who Mr. Moore chose to witness the execution and his relation to them?
We were told 3 people and a member of the clergy. That's all we were given.
Can you talk about what was going through your minds as you were witnessing this?
I was really focused on just trying to be the best observer that I could be. I think that was what my role was. And because of the demands of trying to keep track of the time and to observe everything that was happening, that's really the extent about what went through my mind during the process, but I'll let these guys speak.
Yeah, I would agree. Same. I mean, we were so busy trying to keep an accurate timeline of everything that I don't know. I didn't really think about that.
Maybe Brent could talk to us about how this execution compared to others.
Brent Martin, Nebraska Radio Network. As far as the emotions, I think one of the things you always go into it understanding the gravity of the situation, how solemn it is. So I think the emotion that you have is you understand what is going on and your role. And it's very sobering. I covered 13 executions in Missouri. They were all by lethal injection. These were similar, but in Missouri, it was much longer. In Missouri, by the time the 3-drug protocol, which Missouri used, by the time the first drug was administered, it took 5 minutes before death was pronounced. This was much longer. Other than that, very similar.
Did you detect any discomfort on Mr. Moore's part compared to what you've seen previously in the 13 others that you witnessed?
No, the only thing that I would say is he coughed, which was the only time that I would ever see a condemned inmate do anything in lethal injection was generally when thiopental was administered. He would cough, sometime rise up from the gurney. There was coughing on his part before everything went still, and then death was pronounced.
Was the change in face coloration something common in the previous executions, or was this different?
No, I never noticed a lot of change in color in the past, and that may be due to the time. Again, this was 30 minutes long, and the ones I had had never been that length of time. I don't know what that said. It just how it is.
I just want to clarify that Grant gave a great kind of
Grant did do a great job.
But can you characterize what you saw?
What I saw?
Through this process, yeah.
The only thing is, and I think, did we mention, he did turn and he said, "I love you" to his witnesses. Again, we couldn't see his witnesses. He turned and said, "I love you," mouthed something. At one point, it looked like he was looking up at the ceiling, and he started mouthing some things in the ceiling. I don't know, what. And I thought, well, that was it. And then he turned back and started mouthing some things to his witnesses again before it seemed like the process really started to have an effect on him.
You said the execution chamber was soundproofed, so could you hear him say "I love you"?
No,
You
just.
could just read the.
We couldn't read any, we couldn't read any other than, you
Yeah.
could see that, you could easily tell, "I love you," but the others.
He said some other things as well, but all four of us were looking, and we weren't able to make it out other than the words "I love you." And he said that at least, I want to say at least 3 times, several times, so.
Was Director Frakes in the death chamber?
Yes, it was him and the current acting warden of the prison.
And so did anybody watch him as this was happening?
So
Can you describe?
Mr. Moore was standing, so he was lying down on the, I don't know if I can really illustrate it, he was lying down on the gurney, facing ceiling, and at his feet, if you look at it, his feet, on the left side was Director Frakes, and on the right side was the acting warden. They were both just stood there like this while the process took place.
Pretty unemotional.
Did any of you record?
Pretty unemotional, as far as I could tell, but we were watching more, not them.
Yeah, I only saw it because I glanced over a few times.
Did any of you record Mr. Moore's statements?
Yes.
Can you play that recording for us?
Do you have, I can try to play it online.
Why don't you try to play? I'm going to also, it was only 24 seconds, and it referred, did we have the other statement, Laura? Could we get that?
I'll see about that.
Because he referred to a statement that he hand-delivered. So it was only 24 seconds what he told us. And
He didn't really, I didn't get the feeling that he recited what he had delivered to them. I think he was just summarizing. My statement was about my brother Donnie and the innocent man on death row.
Before you play this, can you just one more time kind of set up the situation, what he looked like, and what his emotional disposition was at this time?
I'll let somebody else take a crack on that. When he came in to give the statement?
Correct.
Okay. Do you want to describe how he looked?
He came in the room, escorted by a total of, there were 5 total people, but 4 people had their hands physically on him, 2 at his sides, 2 at his back. And he came in, and just like most people would do, he kind of like gave the room a once over just to see kind of who all was in the room. He did something with his hands. His hands seemed, in my opinion only, his hands kind of seemed a little tense, like he was a little tense, but not really. For the most part, he was straight-faced. He didn't really show any emotion. We noted that his eyes didn't appear red, as if, he had been, crying or anything like that. For the most part, he looked down at the ground. He made eye contact a couple times, with individuals in the room, but he mostly looked at the ground, and they read the warrant to him. And after they read the warrant to him, he was able to make his statement to us, at which point he gave us a statement. And that was it. The whole process, only a matter of minutes. He was in and out.
How close were you to?
About as close as I am to this gentleman here.
Yeah,
We were able to extend our recording devices out, but
yeah.
we were.
I'll add that he had appeared to be 4 escorts who were very close to him, and a 5th escort who was sort of back a little bit watching. While he stood and made his statement, the 4 escorts were literally in physical contact with him. They weren't holding him or clutching him or anything, but they were so close that if he should, suddenly try to make a quick movement, they were that close to him.
I think weren't 2 of them at least had their hands on his shoulders, I recall.
Right.
Yeah,
Maybe on a forearm, but it was not tightly grabbed. It was just sort of a light pull.
So we were told it was going to start at 10. Grant, you said it started at like 10:24. door?
Yeah.
We weren't let out of the room that we were in until 10:17.
Yeah.
We arrived in the execution chamber observation area at 10:19.
Yeah.
And the curtain lifted at 10:24.
Was there any indication why it didn't start?
We had not heard anything.
Is that a statement? Can one of you read it,
And do you have copies?
Were you going to replay what he said?
Is this what he
Yeah.
actually said or the statement that he was referring to?
This is what
This is the statement he was referring to.
Can one of you
Can we
read
hear
it?
what he said to you guys on record?
I can try it. I don't know if it's going to. Brent probably has a much better audio. I will try on my iPhone here.
Oh, this one you playing?
Yeah. Do you have
Yeah, I
a?
can replay it. You got it.
You may make a final statement at this time.
Just the statement that I had delivered to you already about my brother Donnie and the innocent men on Nebraska's death row. That's all that I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And I'll play that for these microphones over here one time as well.
You may make a final statement at this time.
Just the statement that I had delivered to you already about my brother Donnie and the innocent men on Nebraska's death row. That's all that I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Proceed.
And I was able to record that, and I'll have it up on our website too if you want that as well. This is what, I'm sorry.
Could somebody just repeat what he said?
Yeah. I have it written down. I have it written down word for word. So. Give me 1 second here. Okay, this is word for word. She asked, do you have a statement to make? And he said, quote, just the statement that I hand-delivered to you already about my brother Donnie and the innocent men on Nebraska's death row. That's all that I have to say. And then she said, thank you, sir. And he said, you're welcome.
Okay, I can read that statement. This is the statement delivered to us. It's dated 8/2 of 2018. On June 20th, 2018 marked my 38th year on Nebraska's death row. And in late August, it will be 39 years since I had convinced my 14-year-old brother to go with me, in parentheses only, to rob a man who drove an Omaha cab almost 39 years ago. The ACLU and my attorney at the Nebraska Commission on Public Advocacy would like to file something on my behalf, but most certainly I do not. But if they would really like to, then I wish they would file a motion for my brother Donald to get him off parole, which he has been on since forever, it seems like. Then that would be perfect for me. As his older brother, whom he looked up to, I should had led him in the right way to go instead of bringing him down, way down, and because of that, I am terribly sorry. In parentheses, please forgive me, Don, somehow. In conclusion, if there are truly those out there who are against capital punishment, there are some on Nebraska's death row who claim to be innocent. In parentheses, I can think of 4. Perhaps it is a fact that they are innocent. Why must they remain there one day longer than all the years they have been there? I am guilty, they are not. How might you feel if your loved one was innocent and on death row? Or what if you were the innocent on the row? How long must you be here before you were executed or had to spend the rest of your innocent life in prison? 3 question marks. Signed by Carey Dean Moore, and he has ex-death row inmate.
I know it's real close to this, what's going on, and there were jobs to do as reporters. Has this process for you as individuals and human beings at all yet? And if not, how do you expect to process that as you go forward?
In preparation for this, I did talk to a number of people who have witnessed executions, and I'll just share a couple things that that they sort of collectively have said is that sometimes, the impact of seeing another human being's life takes a while to settle in, and they've recommended to people, especially corrections workers who have been dealing and training for this moment for weeks and months, that they should seek out somebody. They should seek out somebody to talk to, whether it's a friend, whether it's a confidant, whether it's somebody professionally. They sort of emphasize professionally. I just don't know, you're right, it's too close at this time to know how that will impact me. So.
I've always just tried to be detached from it, try to go into it as it's my job. It's a very solemn responsibility, and approach it as a job.
I feel the same way. I was sent here to do a job. I try to do it to the best of my ability. I know that death is a process, and I don't know what to expect in the future, but it really hasn't processed yet.
Yeah, I guess I would echo that as well. And like Joe, I talked to a few of my colleagues in AP reporters in other states who have witnessed executions, just to kind of get a sense of what to expect. I haven't really had a whole lot of time to process it either myself, but I think, as was mentioned earlier, we're here to do a job. It's important that there was some independent witness there to follow the process and to just track how it was carried out.
I think what Grant said there is very important. It's important that media witnesses be there so you have independent verification of how it was carried out. This is the state's ultimate punishment, and somebody needs to be there to view it and to report to the public as objectively as possible.
Brent, I've got one other question just about the length of time, and maybe address all 4 of you individually. If this was longer than the Missouri executions that you witnessed, did any of you have a sense that this was taking too long to carry out?
I did not have that sense. The sense I had is it was a different protocol, and they approached it a bit differently. One of the things you have to remember is Nebraska has never used lethal injection before. Missouri had used lethal. Missouri went from the gas chamber to lethal injection, and it's always, people chafe when you use the word routine, but it had become routine. They had a system, they knew how to do it, and they used the traditional 3-drug protocol. And so it was just different. I didn't get any sense that it did not go other than how they planned it to go.
As a witness for the media, though, did you feel you had enough information? Did you see enough to get a good gauge of how the execution went? They said they closed the curtain, they brought you in at certain times. Was there more things that you wanted to see, or within taste, did you see all that you thought you needed to see?
I think we saw everything we needed to see. I'm not sure exactly why they closed the curtain and raised it back up. My experience in the past was that never anything like that. Curtain was open from beginning to conclusion, but it was much shorter. I didn't get a feel that we didn't get to see what we needed to see to report to the public accurately.
Do you think, so your sense, Brent, was that they were more deliberate, perhaps?
I think so. I think they're more deliberate. The whole saline flush that they used, that was never used in Missouri. You know, they were just different how they approached it. I mean, I don't know how to say it other than that. It was just different.
Who was doing the injecting, or was he connected to a machine?
Yeah, that was where you would see the line come out of the wall.
Okay.
So you could not see the person who was administering the drugs, excuse me. And that there was a window in that room as well. However, the curtain during the period that we could observe, the curtain for that window was shut the entire time. So we could not see the faces of anyone from the Department of Corrections besides Director Frakes and the Deputy Warden Matson. So.
And the only thing I'd add on that is exactly as I experienced in the other execution. You did not see the execution team. You didn't see any. You saw a tube. You could see the drugs flow, but you could not see anybody beyond that wall.
And I'll just quickly note, we did not see the coroner pronounce time of death or whatever steps the coroner took to make that determination, or whichever professional made the determination of death. That all happened out of our view.
Brent, to clarify, are you the only one out of you four who has witnessed?
As far as I know, yes. I have not. This is my first.
I have not either. And I will piggyback off the question about the curtain closing and whatnot. For me personally, I would like to see the curtain stay up the whole time. I understand that they want to conceal the identity. They don't want people to know, who's part of the execution team. However, if it's supposed to be transparent, then I would like to see it, be totally transparent. We don't know what they did behind the curtain when it was down.
Do any of you have questions like you wish could have been answered? Are you left with any questions?
I'm sure some will come to mind eventually, but it's all just sort of, it all happened, it seemed like it happened relatively quickly. I mean, obviously we were so busy transcribing and everything along those lines. I don't know, nothing comes to mind right now. I'm sure I will later though.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I noted, and like Grant was talking about, we did the timeline, and I don't know exactly how to explain it, but this is consistent in executions. It always seems longer than it actually is, and I think it's just because of the gravity of the situation. Just time seems to really lengthen, and just because there were some times when we were talking about what 10:30, 10:31, it didn't seem like, it would seem like it was much longer than a minute. It just really did. It always does.
Yeah.
Could each of you talk about what's your biggest takeaway, like leaving and witnessing this? What have you left with?
I would say for a reporter, I've been in Nebraska since 1990, and there were 3 executions that took place in the 1990s with the electric chair, and then there has been this, this 21-year lag, and covered the debate, an extraordinary debate in the legislature in 2015, in which the death penalty was repealed, and then to have the people of Nebraska speak and say that they want the death penalty restored. And it's been also a long and I think exhausting for everybody's struggle throughout this process for the state officials who wanted to restore the death penalty and those who are trying to stop it. So it's a monumental day. There's no question. It's a significant day in the state's history. And that's all.
For me, my last execution I witnessed in Missouri was in 2005, and I thought that was the last execution I would ever witness. And when I came to Nebraska and reporting in Nebraska, executions were more academic than anything else. I mean, and I just really thought we would never get to this point. The state had not executed anybody in such a long time. It had been such a debate in the legislature for so long, and it is very difficult to get the drugs. I've covered death penalty cases for a long time. I did not think this day would take place, but it is now for Nebraska. I think Joe is exactly right. This is history making for Nebraska. If Nebraskans need to I think take this in, think about it like they do with the debate in the legislature and all the others, and the debate during the 2016 election. And this is just one more piece for people to think about when they think about capital punishment and whether the state should carry out the death penalty or not. But I thought when I came to Nebraska, it was just academic. It was, we're going to talk about it. Nobody's ever actually going to be executed. So in some ways, it came as quite a surprise to me.
My biggest takeaway from today is that I just hope that this never happens to an innocent person. If it is going to happen to someone, make sure that they did what they're accused of doing, because if it happens to somebody innocent, then it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with everything that was what Joe and Brent especially said about the historic nature of the day. I know people had asked me earlier, what's going through your head, and I told them that obviously I wasn't looking forward to this day, but it's something that I feel like we as journalists have to do. It's important to bear witness to something like this taking place, and obviously it happens in the context of this huge ongoing debate that we've had in Nebraska. Going back 40 years with Senator Chambers introducing bills to repeal the death penalty, and the historic vote in 2015. So I guess I feel like it's important that we were here to note the historic this particular event, but it's obviously a very grave thing to have to do, and it's just something we had to do. So.